what I'm seeing here are firms looking for younger staff.
No, they're looking. That's a twofold problem in its own right, because they're looking for staff. They're looking for asses in seats.
They're looking for people who know how to turn on and operate a computer.
Yes, and it's the juniors, and it's junior staff that does that. But it's those,
and they're cheap.
That's the key. That is the big key. So rather than hiring the Evans, the Neils, and the Cormacs that are going to come with a price tag, but even though that price tag is relatively low, they can say, I can hire 2 or 3, I don't know, Bobs to fill the seat rather than getting one Evan. And so now I've got, 3 people doing the work of one Evan. The problem is that the one Evan is going to be far more productive, and your project is going to be far more productive with the one Evan than the 3 Bobs.
Welcome to the Archispeak podcast, the podcast for architects by architects, where we discuss all things about architecture. I'm Neil Pan. Each episode, Evan Troxel, Cormac Phelan, and me invite you in on the conversation as we talk about everything in the profession, both the good and the bad. Maybe you're considering a career in architecture, you're still in school, or you've been around the block more times than you'd like to admit. Join us in the studio as we gather around the water cooler and talk about this profession we call architecture. It's time for some Archispeak.
I died in South Africa, only outlined my body in Tiffany blue. When I died, I drove right in and swam with the dolphins and Lisa Frank. And you.
Welcome to episode 69 of the Archispeak podcast. I'm Neil Pan.
I'm Evan Troxel.
And I'm Cormac Phelan.
And this episode of Archispeak is sponsored by ARCAT. Visit them at arcat.com. We'll talk a little bit more about them later in the show, but first off, I think that's what we're going to talk about, is some firsts.
That's right. First off,
Yeah, everybody's, it's that time of year. People are going back to school, first day of school, and some people got first days on the job.
that's right. I hear what this was like.
Yeah, so it was interesting. I've been on the receiving end of people having to be trying to find work for people to do on their first day, and so this was the time where I got to be the new guy, as we used to call it in the Army, the FNG, and you could figure out what that means.
Whoa, FNG.
FNG.
Can we say what that is?
You can assume you can go ahead and just figure out.
Ah, okay,
Not
I
taking
got
the
it.
time to beep anything.
Exactly.
Yeah, all right. That's all right.
and so I got there. Got there early, or at least got there. I had enough in time so that I could get in the office and not look like, oh, look, the new guy, he's late. Pretty much got there before almost everybody else in the office.
Eager beaver there.
Whoa, wait. So if you get there before everyone else is there, what are you supposed to do?
Just sit in the car, listen to podcasts.
I sat in the lobby waiting for, the people. So, or you may not remember what your first day was like, but, a lot of people out there have, been, recent graduates have gone through their first day. And so a lot of it is your HR paperwork, filling out, going through the employee manual,
Sign here.
Yeah, sign here.
Sign here.
And here. Here's this, we do this, we do that, you're going to do this, you're responsible for that, those kind of things. And that usually gives them enough time, especially like on a Monday morning. And even though, say, your project manager or whoever was expecting you to, on Friday, they were leaving, and they were saying, okay, oh yeah, that's right, I've got a new guy coming in on Monday. Rarely does anybody really take the time to kind of prep up for having, to hit the ground running.
Why is that? Why is that?
Because they're busy.
Because they're busy.
It was always fun. It's just like, oh, hey Cormac, you're going to be doing, you're going to take this new guy and, just give him something to do. You're like, I'm trying to make stuff for me to do, and I got to, yeah. So I did the obligatory, the guy I'm working with or working for, he walked me around the office and made the introductions to everybody. And this is an office of about, say, 100 or so. They've got...
oh, my goodness.
Yeah, they've got...
Are you expected to remember everybody's names?
No.
Oh,
actually...
Okay. There's a quiz at the end of the day or something?
I'm in what they are calling their arts and science division, like section, whatever. But it's arts and science, and it's predominantly higher ed buildings. And
you and me both. Nice.
I know, yeah. So there's I'm filling in.
You guys might want to work at the same firm someday.
Just might. But what was interesting is it's a lot like Evan. It's a lot like your firm where you've got all of these different you've got K through 12, you got your higher ed, you got your healthcare and stuff. And even though in your office it's 200 people, just in that particular office, that yes, I've been to HMC, so I know how big of a firm they are. But they, it never felt that big. And this is another one of those places that, it just doesn't feel that big. It's located in absolutely one of the coolest places. It's in downtown Baltimore. And it's in this complex of buildings that used to be the old Procter & Gamble soap factories. And so all of these different buildings, I believe there's like 7 or 8 of them, can't be certain, but each one of them are named after a product that Procter & Gamble made. So there's the Joy building, the Dove building, and things like that. So it's kind of cool, but it's right next door. And I think we'll probably have in our show notes a picture of the dock where, you can walk up to the building and there's, you're basically walking along the water, and right next door is one of the last few sugar refineries in this big, huge urban setting. There's downtown Baltimore with all of these high rises going up, or mid rises because it's Baltimore. You can see all the cranes going up in the background, and when you in the show notes you'll see the picture. But it's watching sugar being unloaded from these big, huge tankers. It's kind of interesting that even if you kind of somewhat get bored with with the day or something like that, all you got to do is look outside, and there's just so much activity on the water going around. It's on the inner harbor of downtown Baltimore, so you can see like the water taxis going by, and the little tour boats and stuff, and there's a lot of life. And what's even cooler is this Procter & Gamble plant, this one company, you guys may or may not have heard of them before, but anyway, they came in and they bought this entire area and turned it into their global headquarters. So now it's the global headquarters of Under Armour.
Never heard of it.
And it's those sporty things.
It's that sports thing. Sports, yeah, never mind.
And the guy who owns Under Armour, I did a little research. I was like, oh my God, he's 2 years younger than me, and it's worth $4.3 billion or 3.4.
Not an architect.
Not an architect.
Yes, not an architect.
So I was like, wow. But so it was interesting. They kind of threw me, into the fire pretty quickly. Just kind of getting my feet wet on a project at Washington University in St. Louis, and it's interesting to see the dynamic of the project teams from what I'm used to. And sure, there's maybe 7, 8, 9 consultants on a project for the K through 12 that I'm used to, and most always all local. I was looking at the project team, and I think they may have, and I could be wrong, like somewhere around the neighborhood of like 20, 25 different consultants on there, because it's a chemistry building. And so there's like seismic consultants, vibration consultants, radial and nuclear consultants.
You just said nuclear.
Nuclear. Nuclearer. And there's like the local firms in St. Louis, and then there's like a planning specialist in Copenhagen, and it's just like, wow, it's like, this is kind of cool.
Well, this sounds all very romantic, but I mean, didn't you have to like sit down and spend an hour like filling out forms or stuff like that? I mean,
you were sleeping during that part.
Yeah,
Oh,
I think that was part of your narcoleptic thing going on there.
Had you on mute while I was coughing. I didn't hear that.
You're a little under the weather.
Yes.
That's a lot of consultants. Jeez, I mean, we're doing a math and science building too. We have a lot of consultants, but not 25. Dang.
I think this might be unusual because of the way that the project was gone after, so it was kind of interesting. But the thing that I see as an extremely positive change is, for now the 3 days that I've been there, every day there's been, even if it's on a small level to the macro to a micro, there's always conversations about design, about the integration of the design of the plan and how it integrates into this. And, oh, you've done this gesture, so now it informs that and stuff like that. And it's been some dialogues that have been long time needing in coming. So it felt good to kind of be in a very openly collaborative environment.
It sounds like I think one of the most important things about working anywhere is that you can be inspired by it.
Yes.
And so it sounds like you're really starting off on the right foot.
Absolutely. It's been, there's there was always challenges and stuff like that you normally have in a first day kind of environment, because again, you're always trying to have somebody figure out what's the new guy going to work on, kind of thing. But they were ready for me, and they kind of threw me into it. And there's a lot of reading early on of just reading the feasibility study and a couple of different things here and there. But it was always good to kind of see, and then just really kind of look around the office and watch the interaction of the office, because it's
you're kind of taking it all in.
Oh yeah. But I mean, you're just like kind of watching the dynamics of all these like little small teams that work together, and they're all huddling around desks and they're talking to each other, and they're like really kind of collaborating, and it was really impressive.
Nice.
It was very impressive.
One of the things that I enjoyed making the move from K-12 to higher ed was not only the level of the clients in at least in the region that we're working in are a level up, but the consultants were a big level up too.
Yeah. There's definitely a level of sophistication that was never part of or the factor of a K through 12, design, because you got to think about all the fit and finishes, both interior and exterior of any building. But a lot of the K through 12 is a lot more dumbed down. You're trying to make bulletproof buildings that little kids can beat up on. Yep. Here you've got something that you're not only trying to create a lab building, but you're also trying to create a, something that represents the university and will draw researchers from around the world to choose your university to do their work rather than the next one or the next one. So you're trying to make it this kind of like world-class environment with you're talking high rent versus low rent.
Well, it sounds like your first week is a little unlike maybe this article on Entrepreneur Architect about establishing an orientation for new employees. As the article states, you kind of did the first day thing where you kind of got walked around, introduced to everybody. Where here's the coffee room, the bathrooms, stuff like that. But the article kind of has some fun here. It talks about maybe some typical second and third day experiences where eventually somebody comes around and maybe gives you something to work, but you're kind of afraid to ask questions for fear of looking dumb. It doesn't sound like you've experienced that, at least.
No. I mean, they literally threw you in. I mean, it was interesting the very first day, nearing the end of the day. They had a client meeting, I guess the week or two prior to me joining. And they basically kind of gave a debrief to I guess it was last week, but they gave a debrief to the principal in charge, as well as me, the new guy, kind of gave a debrief of the project, where the project's going, and where things stand, and so it kind of gave me a good opportunity to understand the project dynamic and also the team dynamic, because, everyone on the team was there, from principal in charge down to the, CAD guy. I don't really want to call him the CAD guy. He's a project architect. But anyway, so it, and everybody was, having a chat, and even I was getting into the conversation of, the dynamics of the project and things like that. And, it was good to see, again, and I've already said this, but it was good to see a top-down, bottom-up total collaboration with the team. The project designer, project manager, everybody was there just kind of flushing this thing out. And, and it's been a while. There's, coming from a smaller firm, you kind of are a little more compartmentalized in, doing a project, and you're kind of like either one of two people doing a project. And so there's not a lot of, it almost feels like sometimes you're doing a project with blinders on. And so, again, this being my first experience with a large firm like this, I've always worked in smaller firms where at best I was working at the largest firm I think I worked for was like 30, 35 people. So to be able to see how a larger firm that you don't have to do everything, and that'll be something that I'm going to have to really kind of teach myself how to do, is
you gotta
rely on other people, trust them, but also not get over the belief that I have to do, if I want it done, I have to do everything. That there's other people, there's spec writers, there's QA QC people, there are it's a mechanism set up for success, not set up for failure.
Nice.
So let's make this the Cormac interview show. I want to know, I think people would be interested to know what it took to get you to switch jobs. So we've already talked a little bit about the inspirational part, like actually being interested and enjoying so far in your 3-day tenure. But what did it take? You went through an interview process. You have been at the other firm for 6 years, and now you're looking at making a big change. I mean, and we shouldn't downplay it. It is a big change for you. So
huge.
Maybe talk a little bit about kind of what convinced you to go, and then we can go from there. But I mean, what are some of the compromises? Like, what wasn't easy to swallow about making that decision on top of what was really obvious about making the decision? Because you obviously chose it, you're there. So there was something that was like, okay, here's the pro column and here's the con column. The pro column must be way bigger than the con column, but there's still stuff in both.
Yeah. I mean, I think the pro column, and I've already talked to a lot about, like the team makeup and the collaboration, this kind of like almost inherent collaboration that's built into the just the way that they form the teams, and the process of the of the project and things like that. And it may sound very generic, but it really isn't. I mean, there's a lot of this, we all know this, everybody listening knows this, that when you work on projects that are understaffed, they're killers. I mean, it's stressful. It's painful at times. I mean, it's, you basically burn the candle at every possible end that you can.
There are more than two ends, yeah.
Find. Exactly. You're cutting it in the middle and you're burning it there too, and everything else. And it's just, and so, there's sometimes when firms are unwilling to grow and staff properly, it becomes taxing. And so for me, I was looking for, not only just a challenge, but, there's a time, and you said it best, that there's a project dynamic, there's a design dynamic change. I don't know if I put those words in order correctly at this late evening, but there's a huge difference between doing K through 12 and higher ed, and it's an interesting challenge. And there's a point sometimes when you really want to get into your career and you're like, okay, I've done this, and it's not that you can't keep doing it and master it and like be one of the best, but then there's also the time where you think that I could do, I don't plan on not ever doing K through 12 again, but I also think that there's an opportunity to learn more and be able to bring a lot more to going, once I go back to, like, say, doing K through 12 and stuff, there's a lot more that I'll be able to bring to it. There's a lot, there'll be some different design sensibilities and things like that I'll be able to bring to it that I really am looking forward to embracing this. I mean, I sat there and I'm looking at, both the team makeup of this particular project I'm working on and everything, and I just realized how little I know about, like, sometimes architects are cocky and they say, oh, I can do this and I can do that.
Not you.
And I'm sitting I'm sitting there and I'm looking at him like, holy crap, I've got a lot to learn.
Yeah, always. The older you get, the more you realize you don't know.
Yeah, and to me though, but that's the exciting challenge. It's not something that I'm afraid of doing. It's something that I'm looking forward to and relishing the fact that, this is going to be something that's going to be great. I can tell the way that this particular firm in, part of this pro column is this, everybody has, a role. They don't, they don't talk about, well, this is above your pay grade, so, you're not going to be involved with this conversation. Even though everybody has a role, everybody's involved with the conversation. There's a lot of transparency and a lot of conversation. Getting involved with, the level of talking through a client, talking with a client about the proposal and trying to justify where the dollars are going, the design dollars are going and stuff. Those were usually things that I wasn't a part of the conversation, but I was today. And I thought that was great that, I was able to start to see some things that even where I think that I should, some of my weaknesses in my career, I think, or at least in my experience knowledge, is, I never really got to deal a lot with the external financials. The internal, like, keeping the project on budget, keeping the project on, on task with marrying up the budget and the schedule and everything else. I did things like that, but, being able to establish the initial budget and, knowing, what the starting point is and things like that, were things that I was, typically kept out of. And, and I can kind of see that these are things that I'm going to be able to strengthen myself, my experience on, and it's going to be pretty cool.
I'd like to go back a little bit to something you were talking about earlier when you were talking about, this is something that's come up, and it's the talent gap, right? So there was something that they realized that they kind of had to have you, is my guess, because of your experience, and you needed a change of scenery. It's like when I went on vacation and I'm driving out of Southern California to Colorado. There becomes a point in the Mojave Desert where you need a change of scenery because you get tired of looking at the same thing every day. And so, I mean, I totally get it. When you're working on a particular project type and a particular group of people and you're working with a particular type of client, there just gets to a point where you realize, like, there is so much more out there that you want to learn.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, at this new firm, when they're looking seriously at you and what you had to offer, can you talk a little bit about that? Like, why was this so important for them? Because this has come up with a few of our listeners, and we've been reading about the talent gap, where there's been a lot of people were laid off in the recession. There's a lot of graduates looking for work who don't have a lot of experience, and then there's the older generation in the firm who don't know how to use the tools, but they've got the experience and the relationships, right? And so let's talk a little bit about the talent gap and how you fill that role, and how maybe let's just spell that out kind of for our listeners so they understand that aspect of job hunting and why somebody might be looking for a change of scenery that's related to that.
I don't know if I'm going to be able to, focus it in on change of scenery, but, or maybe I will, but.
Well, for me, I'm relating to project type as being a change of scenery, right?
So I'll try to answer that a bit, use it as me as the example, but not to be too specific in certain aspects. But
just speaking from your experience.
So when I was when I started looking around, now here I am, been a project manager for going on the better part of a decade or so, and actually even longer than that, and really, my project management role has been something very different than a lot of people have been looking for, especially in larger firms. And in fact, I've went on a couple of different interviews at a couple of different firms, and it seemed like I was almost a weird anomaly of a project manager, where they're used to, somebody who's got a compartmentalized, set of knowledge that, they moved up from, I was an intern to a junior project architect to a senior project architect to then, into project management. And even though they've gained some of those skills to get to, becoming a project manager, a lot of times they've left, as they've been, stuck in being a project manager for the past, decade or so, they've left a lot of the, earlier knowledge behind, and the technology has changed, and, the building types have changed and stuff like that, but they know how to manage a project, but maybe not really know how to, kind of do the inner workings of what their staff is going to be doing. And the good thing about working at such smaller firms is, when I say I'm a project manager, I am the intern. I am the junior project architect. I am the senior project, architect. I am the project manager. I am the spec writer. I am the one who puts together all of these different things. And so there there are those guys out there. There's guys like me who are out there, that during the recession, I was, during the recession, I was working on my own, and, I had to fire myself. I had to let myself go. But I seemed to have a set of skills that was marketable enough that I could take a diminished role, but be able to fit into, almost any one of the needs that firms that were actually hiring were looking for. And that's something that's interesting, because so when there's a lot of people like me who got laid off during the recession, who had that certain set of skills, it took them a long time to find a job, and sometimes the profession has kind of left them behind. And so you've got the people who are there that are more senior and they don't understand Revit. Let's just use that as an example. They don't know how to use Revit, or they don't know how to use like Photoshop the Adobe products and stuff like that. And, so they don't understand how some of this stuff works. And they've got kids who are coming in who just recently graduated. They know all of these programs, but they don't know how to get a project moving and going forward. And so that kind of middle manager of the 8 to 10 year kind of person that understands all of the programs and understands pretty much more or less are project managers in their own rights.
You kind of speak both sets of people's languages, right? Exactly.
But those guys right there were the ones that were laid off because they were the salary that it was hard. I could almost guarantee that it was probably very hard for the firm to let them go, but they could hire 2 or maybe 3 interns for the price they were paying for one senior project manager, and so, or a senior project architect, kind of that middle guy. And so they let the knowledge base go to get production work, but like the production work doesn't have a direction because the project manager doesn't know how to talk to guys who don't know anything but only know the program. And so it's kind of
they haven't put a set of documents together, right? I mean,
exactly,
as an example.
And so they're like, okay, well, this is your first day at work. I want you to draw some toilet room plans. And it's like crickets. And, so there's a that interesting, so when I was interviewing, it was kind of interesting because they were, a lot of times people were asking me, it's just like, okay, so I see this project that you're presenting to me as your work. What was your role on that project? And, I said, well, I was a project, they're like, well, what was your role during design? I was like, well, I was the project designer, I designed it. And they're like, okay, so when you finished designing it, you turned it over to the production staff. Like, yeah, I guess, but I was the production staff. They're like, oh, you did the production too? I'm like, yeah. They're like, okay, well, tell me about the production. It's just like, oh, so once you got through DDs and stuff, did you like pass it on to somebody who detailed it out and got all of the construction documents pulled together and on out? And it was like, no, I did that too. And then they're like, okay, well, tell me about how you worked with your spec writer. I was the spec writer.
I went to arcat.com.
Exactly, I went to arcat.com. A lot of times, but it was kind of interesting because so like these larger firms have roles defined, and so it's
it is the assembly line, right?
It's the assembly line, and
yep.
And so they were they weren't quite sure. It's like, okay, well, where do we put this guy then? Because if he's not managing a project, which he's been doing, is it they're like, well, if he's going to become a project architect again, is that like, does that knock him down to, is he going to feel like he's being demoted? And, or, we don't, we're not staffing for project managers because the associate principals are the project managers. And we're not hiring him as an associate principal, but, kind of thing. So
they don't know what to do with you, but they know that they can't do it without you, is kind of the position that you're in. Right. And that is a great position to be in because you actually have some say in your path moving forward.
Absolutely. Because then they know that if they're going to tell you something, they know you understand exactly what they're saying because you used to give those same direction kind of thing. So I guess I don't really have a defined title per se at my new firm. I guess it's and that's fine. I'm kind of a jack of all trades sort of thing. And I'll
Swiss Army knife. How about that?
There you go. The Swiss Army knife is perfect. But yeah, so it's going to be interesting how it develops. But it's something that they know that I have all of these different skill sets. And, I'll be able to, so they'll be comfortable with basically giving me any challenge.
Yeah, I think we could probably take a break and talk about our sponsor, but just as a kind of a summary there for people who are young in the profession, I mean, basically what you're hearing is learn everything you can about as much as you can, and working in a small practice gives you a ton of different types of experience.
Yes.
And you get a lot of experience in a lot of different ways. And it does sound kind of daunting, right? If you're doing so much on every project, it sounds kind of overwhelming. But I think one of the things that architects kind of suck at is asking for help. And there are people in these firms who, if you ask them for help, they'll help you. And if not, go somewhere else.
Yeah.
So what about ARCAT? ARCAT, would you like somebody to draw CAD details for you? How about create BIM objects for you? Maybe even write specs for you. Would you like someone to do this all for free? ARCAT has already done this for you. Search the ARCAT libraries for these products and more, free of charge and no registration required to download the content. ARCAT has created a website devoted to you, the building professional. To find building products information fast and hassle-free. Check out ARCAT today at arcat.com. And we want to thank ARCAT for continuing to sponsor the Archispeak podcast. Thank you, ARCAT.
Thanks, ARCAT.
And thanks for sponsoring most of my search engine knowledge. And it's actually things like ARCAT, we're old enough to remember the old Suites catalogs and stuff like that, and they're long since gone. And there is Suites Online, but that's going away too. But, you've got, ARCAT, who literally does have details and specs and all of these things that you can pull down from their website, that you're pulling down not from ARCAT, you're pulling it down from the manufacturers. And ARCAT's this, good one-stop shop to be able to find all this stuff.
They're a hub.
And it's, and these are valuable tools because I can't tell you how many times they've bailed me out. And
do you value your time? That's the question you have to ask.
Exactly. It's, let me go search this project and see. I think there might be a detail like this. No, you can go to the manufacturer and pull down from their website the actual detail that you really want to have, and then pull down the specification of that actual product that you want to specify. And it's right there. There's a lot. There'll be a little bit of editing in the specs, but you know what? You're at least editing the latest and greatest spec and not saying,
not something that doesn't exist anymore.
I remember one time I was during an addendum period, and there were all these bidders were having all of these questions, and some RFIs came in, and they're like, in this particular specification, you're calling for this and this and this, and do you know that all three of the manufacturers that you're specifying are all out of business? Like,
stupid architect.
Interesting. And they're just like, yeah, this guy right here, this one, he's been out of business for 12 years. Like, oh, that's
Jeez.
bad.
Thanks for checking.
Like, thank you for reading the specs, and I wish I would have done the same thing. And with ARCAT, you don't get caught with that. You're literally pulling down the people who are still in business, and you're using the latest and greatest in the material technology and detailing.
Go to arcat.com, check it out.
They're a lifesaver and a time saver.
All right, so back to one of my earlier questions that I don't think we really got to, but what made it the hardest? What was the hardest thing about leaving a firm, and what are the compromises that you made, or the things that you saw as compromises to make the switch?
Well, I'll tell you, the thing that was the hardest for me is, and one of the reasons why I was there probably a little bit longer than I should have been, was the convenience of the fact that I lived 12 minutes away. It was 7.1 miles from exit 1 to exit 8 on the local interstate here, and it was that easy. I was able to take my kids to school and still make it to work on time, and probably be one of the first people in the office. And there was a level of convenience, a level of being able to, well, if I needed to go home for lunch, I could, because, get an hour lunch, 15 minutes there, 15 minutes back, got a half an hour lunch. That's great. Could eat lunch with my wife when she was available, and it was fantastic. This is not going to be the case. I sacrificed commuting time. So I've now given myself a 45-minute commute from where I'm at down in the DC suburbs to Baltimore, which is about 35 miles. And it's straight up, Interstate 95. And it's really not that bad of a commute there and back. I'm going against traffic, so it's really not that bad, and it's optimal time to listen to your favorite podcast of maybe three guys talking about architecture, maybe, but that was, that's really one of the bigger things, and then, even bigger than that is, the camaraderie and friendship that I had there. Was there for 6 years, and I saw a lot of people come and go, but I also made some lasting friendships, and they're still there, they're still chugging along doing their thing there, and I don't get to see them every day, so that was something that's kind of hard, and now I have to basically meet a whole new group of people that I'm going from 25 people to 105 people. So it's it's going to be it'll be fun. It's going to be fun to get to know other people. I won't have the same conversations that I have with them until I kind of find out and figure out who they are. But it'll still be kind of interesting.
What did it take to get out of your comfort zone? Because I think that's a big thing that keeps a lot of people where they're at. It's just you're in this mode of repetition. It gets easy at some point, and then
I think that's called routine.
Yeah. So what did it take for you to break out of that? I mean, was that a big factor for you or not?
Yeah, and without getting too deep into like real particulars of why I left, I think that I've never really necessarily been a routine kind of person. I mean, hell, talk to my sergeant in the Army. He kind of wish I was, but I wasn't. And I was always looking for the new challenge, the new push, and a lot of times the routine to me felt a little too, there were times when, we all feel this, that there's a time when you need that break, you need that vacation. And, it was becoming a little bit more frequent with me that, it was just the monotony of the similarity was really kind of grating on me, that, there was no development of the challenge. There was no what's next kind of thing, or what can we do better, or what can we push harder, and things like that. And it really, it was something that I needed to, challenge myself, because I'm always wanting to learn more, wanting to grow more, and wanting to contribute more. And a lot of times when you're not able to grow within your, where you're at, and you see or have the opportunity to go to a place that is not only, a collaborative place that, has got a lot of different, project types and stuff that you will be able to work on. So you're not just working on the same thing, the same routine and things like that, but, you're able to grow with different project types, but you're also able to grow within the firm. And that's important, especially, at my advanced experience. It's just, there's, if there was no opportunity for me to grow within, where I was at, it was important to me to find a place where I was able to grow, where I was able to contribute, where I was able to be valued. And
I think that's a big one right there.
Yeah.
My alarm went off when you said that. Feeling valued.
Yeah, feeling valued. It's extraordinarily important, and it's something that a lot of times people sacrifice. And a lot of times people, especially, when we were coming out of the recession, we sacrificed a lot because we had a job, and we were the lucky few that had a job.
You were also the lucky few who were told to be lucky that you had a job.
I was getting there, and a lot of times you were reminded that you were very lucky that you had a job, and shut up and do your work. And
here's your pay cut.
Yeah.
Be happy.
Oh, and don't worry, you won't get a raise, but at least you're getting a paycheck, or don't worry, you're not going to do this, but at least you're getting a paycheck, kind of thing. And, there was a time when, the lucky few that did have a job, they were basically abused. They were run into the ground. And, a lot of times people, almost got to a point where they resented the place because they always held this, ooh, you're lucky you have a job. There's so many other people that if you don't, if you're not happy, I can, get rid of you and go get somebody else, or I can go get two of somebody else that'll work for half the price that you do. And,
it's good to have a plan B,
and so it's just if they're talking like that, if they're like, we really don't care if you're here or not. That really kind of puts and this is, just talking in generalities. I'll worry about English later, but, where there was a lot of, I heard so many story after story during the recession about, basically employee abuse, where it was like, you just shut up and be lucky that you have a job. And it never really, even now in our good times, a lot of those people are, all they really cared about is me just, cranking out their projects and stuff like that, and never really did any professional development or enrichment, or there was no promotion for me or anything like that. I was just their cog. And so that's when you're not shown any value for what you do, or what you contribute. The value of what you do is the check that they get from their clients.
I think that's a really tough thing to deal with as a leader, because standing in their shoes, or trying to, I think that being the leader in those times is really tough, because all you're doing is dealing with problems, right?
Yeah.
It's day after day of the most mind-numbing, back-breaking problems that you're dealing with, and you are stressed out and beaten down. You've got to feed the mouths of how many people who work for you, and if all you're hearing is complaints, and it's like, oh, would you please just stop? Can't you just be happy you have a job? And all that is it's a little bit of like crankiness, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like one more problem to deal with now is that somebody's fed up and ready to move on, and all I'm trying to do is keep them getting a paycheck. I think that's a really hard position to be in. So I don't want to sell them short, but at the same time, as employees, we all want to feel like we're valued, and we all want to feel like we're contributing, and that what we're doing is appreciated. And I don't think anybody expects a bonus. Maybe they do, but I don't think they should. But at the end of the day, if there's not enough money coming in, it's not going to happen.
But that was then, and I do think that times are getting better. I mean, if you look at the Dodge report, when they're talking about, architectural billing has been up, for the past few quarters and things like that. And, you are starting to look at the job reports, and you can see that there's a lot more people looking to hire, then that the environment's getting a little bit good out there.
I think they're still digging themselves out of the holes that they're in and paying off their debt. Could be true.
Yeah. But and that's true too. And there is a little bit of give and take between the employee and the employer that needs to happen. But I also think that firms are actually in a good position to be able to pick and choose, the best of the best in the talent, pool. But because when you're going after higher level, project architects and project managers and things like that, and everybody's looking for project architects and project managers, you probably are going to need to kind of up the ante a little bit, and to use the good old term of showing them the money, you got to kind of, show them what is I hate to say, what is in it for them?
Well,
but
what's going to attract those people? You've got to be able to differentiate yourself somehow to say, this is why you need to come work here. I'm totally realize. I know I'm playing both sides of this, but
you should.
And yeah, I mean, we have to be able to see, as architects, we have to be able to see multiple sides and multiple facets of all these problems too. It's the same thing with the businesses that we're either running or working within. You've got to be able to see both sides so that you can really tell the whole story.
I mean, I can't even imagine. I mean, when I was on my own, well, not really on my own, with me and my college buddy, and we were kind of on our own trying to, weed our way through as just, young, dumb designers. And it was hard to, keep that whole, keep that stuff going. And it was, just to keep two mouths fed. It was tough. And so, and, in these firms that are like 100 to 200, 400, I mean, I couldn't even imagine the amount of stress and the kind of feeding of the machine that has to go on there.
Yep. The pressure.
Yeah.
Lots of pressure.
And so, the triviality of one guy kind of complaining about, I really wish I had a raise or something like that. Kind of, wears on, the uppers. But, it's also, maybe take a look and maybe see what that one guy has been contributing. And maybe, maybe it's time to see what you can do to, if you can't give them money, there's always this thought, and it was something that, my old business partner and I would always discuss. But, if we weren't able to give raises or bonuses or things like that, if we had survived and we ever grew, we wanted to show them, how they were valued other ways, like, giving them, paid, extra paid time off, or giving them, maybe closing down the office, or going on, an architectural trip, where, we would be able to, just kind of recapture everybody's inspiration and things like that. So you may not be able to show them the money, but you may be able to show them their value in other ways. And, and that's when you can look at firms and you can kind of great thing about, people who are out there looking for jobs is they can go and look at how, you know, what's the activity of that particular firm on social media? What are they posting on social media? If there are, you know, I mean, now we're getting to a world, you know, it was interesting, this, you know, new firm, you know, I posted something about them, you know, because they had just recently won an award. And even before I started working there, I had posted something about them. And, you know, they're like, oh, thanks, you know, thank you for the tweet. And they were just like, we noticed that you've got, you know, got like 200 times more followers than they do. And they're just like, well, you know, how do you know, so they started like asking me how to help them out, you know, with getting tweets and things like that. And I was like, just, you know, let me get kind of entrenched here. And then then, you know, I'll start helping you out with social media and all that other stuff. But it was, you know, you can look to see what the firm does as, you know, kind of like this enrichment above and beyond the paycheck. And in a lot of these, you know, like we met some great firms down in Atlanta during the AIA conference that does, you know, that very thing. They take their firm and their families on like 3-day retreats into the mountains, and, you know, and has, you know, great time. And that's a great way to show the firm the value that they have. I mean, today I was invited to go and join the softball team. Now, granted, they only have 2 games left, and I worked a little late today, so I wasn't able to. But then there's the, you know, they're having a night out at an Orioles game. You know, I mean, that's a great thing to do, you know, to kind of promote, you know, team building within the office, is just, you know, show, hey, you know, we want to give back to you. We know that you guys sacrifice a lot for us. We want to, you know, sacrifice a little bit for you and show you how much we value you. Granted, it's, again, the game is the Orioles against the Tampa Bay Rays, and I'm going to be clad in the Rays gear. So I might be setting a bad.
That's a good way to set a good team building experience there, Evan or Cormac.
Yeah, well, you know, I mean, everybody's going to be clad in their orange and black for the Orioles, and here I'll be strolling out in my my Carl Crawford number 13 Rays jersey. Granted, he doesn't play for the team anymore, but anyway, I'm going to be sporting my Rays.
I have nothing to say about that.
Go Sports, yay team.
Well, I think that's actually a good place to wrap this one up for this one. So
thanks for sharing all that stuff. I think it's all really good. Yeah. And I mean, obviously this is just the beginning, and either you'll love it or hate it, but either way, I think it's admirable to like take a jump and move to something that's completely different but related. And I think it's a great new start to a new adventure.
Yeah, and I've been working on 2 blog posts that, you know, my ever so fledgling, you know, blog that I keep trying to keep up with, but just can't or wasn't able to. But I think they're going to be. I bring them up because, you know, one is titled, you know, The Right Time to Quit, and then the other one's, you know, basically titled The First Day. And, you know, it's going to expand a little bit more on kind of the conversation that we've had. You know, so, but I want to put it out there, and then I want to link it to, you know, the Archispeak page, but I want to have that conversation with everybody, you know, because, you know, we've talked about, you know, in the last show, we talked about, you know, the times to quit. You know, we're talking, you know, today about, you know, the first day. And, you know, in the past few, was it 3, 4 that we've talked about, you know, jobs, you know, kind of like leaving jobs, looking for jobs, the right jobs and things like that. And I think the important link between all of these shows is now is really a good time in architecture to be looking for jobs and looking for the right job, the job that fits you, that is, you know, that fits who you are, who fits what you're looking for. And, you know, I mean, if we can kind of shed any bit of light to help you guys take a look at what might be the right fit for you. Even if we're not telling you specifics, we're kind of telling you what the overall reaching of like what exactly should you should be doing for both your career and the profession. I think I think these have been some good shows that we've been throwing out there recently.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. So if you've got some questions or want to add your own 2 cents to this, please visit the website at archispeakpodcast.com, and there you'll find links to our individual Twitter accounts and the Archispeak Podcast Facebook page, so you too can join in on the conversation. And always remember, if you've got some inspiring tale to share, maybe you've recently changed jobs yourself and have a first day experience you'd like to share with our listeners, remember you can always call Archispeak Podcast at 415-484-8496. And if it's okay to share on the show, let us know, and we can do that. We enjoy doing that. Plus the Google translation of your message is always a lot of fun to read. So, and also too, just a reminder, if you haven't already done so, please leave us a review on iTunes. It really helps others find the show. So, and lastly, a shout out to Arcat for sponsoring this episode of Archispeak. You can find them at arcat.com. So visit Arcat and let them know that you heard about them on the show. And thanks, everyone, for listening, and stay subscribed.
And join us on Facebook and Twitter for the conversation. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Frank and you. My funeral was beautiful. Oh, we got it for days on end. Thank God I'm cut, 'cause of my kind of luck. I'll be up on the block in front of all of my friends. This is what you get. This is what you get. This is a schedule. This is a set. It's unpredictable as you forget. If you blow, you can bet. I know. This is what you get. This is a schedule. This is a set. It's so predictable as you forget. If you blow, you can bet. I know. Top to the basement. Blow by blow, kinds of steel, very real, very rock, but it's still very rock body. Paper, scissors, sister, preach, deep, open the reach, fast and amps. Bang, jump, stump, pages, atlas, to the rages, a new tool, and a toy pool. Oh, and this is what you get. This is what you get. This is a schedule, this is a set. It's so predictable as you forget. If you blow, you can bet. I know. This is what you get. This is a schedule. This is a set. It's so predictable as you forget. If you blow, you can bet. I know.